creating a series of three videos. And the reason I'm doing that is because your textbook's great, but your textbook is really more in depth in the minority group aspect of this course and less so in some of the terms and sociological theories. So I'm going to create a series of 3 videos for the first module that gives you a better basis for this course. It saves you from having to buy a second textbook, and in my mind, it's just a better way for you to get a grasp on the nuts and bolts of the sociological aspect of this course. So I'm going to start with terms and concepts, and you can't start with terms and concepts without really hitting the intro sociology stuff. So if all of you have taken some sociology, right? Either social problems or sociology or both. And in that, you're going to have learned about values and norms, and they are really the building blocks of how we talk about sociology. Values are moral beliefs. Norms are the way that values tell us to act, right? The way that we act are based on our norms. And socialization is the whole process, the process that you internalize the values, the beliefs, and norms of society. And so everyone's participating in this process of socialization. You are being socialized, you are socializing. Everyone is really responsible for keeping that system going, really without having any choice in it, right? I think about when you have somebody who doesn't leave the door open for you, right, when they're in front of you, right, probably pre-COVID, right, because you need the 6 foot now, but before then you would expect somebody to hold the door open for you if they were behind you, and if you didn't, you might say a sarcastic, "Oh gee, thanks." And so that's socializing, right? You're telling that person that that's not socially acceptable, even though they have no onus to you to leave the door open. That's part of how we keep things going. So it's important to kind of have that background. And if you don't, let me know. If you feel like it's been a while since you've taken it, or you really didn't get a good grasp on that, let me know and I can get you some materials. Social institutions are also pretty important, especially for this course. So understanding what is a social institution and why they're important is really essential for moving forward. Social institutions are, as this description is, are networks of structures in society that work to socialize the groups of people within them. Our basic social institutions are well-established structures, things like the family, the state, the educational system, the economic system, things like religion. They perform basic functions in our society, and they also play a critical role in the perpetuation of inequality. It's the way that these systems operate that keep our inequality in place. Stereotype is something that I cover with an entire content in Module 1. So there's one content piece that is just on stereotypes, an exaggerated belief associated with a category of individuals. When we talk about where the struggle between minority and majority comes from, we talk about prejudice. And stereotypes are one of those pieces that allow for prejudice to develop. So something that starts as a stereotype turns into a prejudice. You might have a stereotype that a person wearing a hoodie is dangerous to you, right? Because you can't see their face and it makes you feel a certain way. And that might turn into a prejudice with the way that you act towards somebody who's wearing a hoodie. You can kind of see where this goes down a path of, unfortunately, past events. We need to talk about minority and majority, right? I've been saying that. I've been saying the minority and the majority several times in this video already without really defining it. So let me do that. We're going to use these terms throughout our course. It's important to know that definition of being majority or majority doesn't necessarily have to do with numbers. It's not the numbers that make it a majority group or a minority group. It is dominant and subordinate. So numbers, although sometimes it correlates, it doesn't always correlate. So keep that in mind. Again, social construct is something that I cover in detail in its own content inside Module 1. And we're actually going to be having a discussion based on social construct. So it's important that you understand what a social construct is. I've got a little video linked for you, and there's a definition right here. we really need to talk about social constructs because we're the ones who decide what these groups even mean. In the little intro, I talk about gender. I mean, we can argue about what someone's biological sex is, but even that's not cut and dry. So we create what it means to be a man and a woman, and how we regulate that and what happens when somebody doesn't meet that social construct. So it's important to really understand what a social construct is and how they're created. It's important to know that social constructs change over time and place, right? What was, let's take marriage for example. Marriage in 1920, very different than what marriage means in 2020. And marriage means very different things between now and maybe rural Louisiana, as far as why you get married and what it means to be married, because marriage is a social construct. Prejudice. I cover a little bit of the prejudice under the stereotype module content, but when we talk about stereotypes, we move from that idea of an entire group being something to judging that group for being something. So the definition is here. Understand that prejudice can be direct or overt. It can be something that's really easy to see or something that is kind of less obvious, right? When you talk about hiring somebody for a job, there's, direct, I'm not going to hire you because you're a woman and you're going to get pregnant and leave. Or there is, we found a better candidate for this position because you're a young woman and you might get pregnant and leave. Some last terms that I'm going to leave you with are ethnocentrism, the tendency to view one's own group as the norm, and then judging other categories as being lesser. Essentially, it's viewing one's own way of doing things as the natural way, the normal way, and then other things are judged against it. It is really easy to think that this is somebody just comparing their experiences to others, but it's not. We certainly have our experiences, and it's hard not to compare our experiences to others, but it's when we say that our experience is the right way and others fall in accordingly, then it's ethnocentric. Scapegoating, tendency to take your feelings of frustration and aggression out on someone other than their true source. Typically, scapegoating happens with an outgroup, a minority, somebody who's relatively powerless. The process of projection is somewhat related, but it's also different. Projection is a process in which one minimalizes or avoids or denies undesirable characteristics in oneself by exaggerating those in the others. So it's you're putting the problem on someone else. I can't find a job because that group is taking all the jobs, not necessarily because you don't have the skills or the job set doesn't exist anymore. So there's going to be 3 of these videos in this module. We're going to focus next on theories, different sociological theories.